Hello, Coach Alexa here. I had a question come in recently about returning to running after kind of a cough, a cold, flu, something like that, or COVID. Um, Now, there are very different answers to that question depending on what it is you've had. So I'll start off with my advice about just the common cold. So if you're a bit stuffy in the nose, and you just, not feeling too ill, you've just got a bit of a runny nose, maybe you're sneezing a little bit, then it is fine to continue running, but I wouldn't do anything high intensity. So I'd just do fairly gentle, low heart rate, easy effort runs until all the symptoms have gone. If you've got anything like a sort of sore, scratchy throat, and definitely if you have anything that's going into the chest, so you're kind of coughing, particularly if you're kind of coughing up stuff, then it's best just to stop running and let your body have the time to recover. You will recover a lot quicker from all of these things if you stop training and don't try and push through. The more you push through, the more you're giving your body to do. And there is actually, when you train hard, a dip in our immune system's function. So we want to give our immune system and our body the best possible, odds of just fighting off the cold or the illness. You get better much more quickly and then can crack on with training as you were. Usually with a cold, you don't miss more than a week, and in which case fitness won't have faded. Maybe take that next week a little bit more gently as you get back into it, and then you can crack on. With things that are viruses, airborne respiratory viruses, but are more serious, so I'll give you my advice about flu to start with. So flu is horrid. It will make you feel quite ill. It will give you a temperature. It'll have all sorts of muscle ache symptoms. And while you've got any of that, no running at all. But you won't feel like it anyway. It won't give you any benefit. It'll probably delay your recovery. But my advice as well with these sort of nasty viruses is, like the flu, is to leave yourself a good 2 or 3 days after you feel fine before you try a really short, easy, gentle run. Because when we're just sat around at home or doing our work and not really physically challenging ourselves, we can feel fine. But we go out and start physically challenging ourselves with a training session, and we suddenly realise that actually we're not quite 100% yet. I would say it normally takes 2 or 3 weeks, just gradually ramping our bodies back up once we are feeling 100% and have left it for 2 or 3 days after that, in order to get back into full training again. So that, if you've got a training plan that you're following, you might need to just have a bit of a rethink, or maybe, get in touch with me about how you kind of replan that training, because you'll have taken probably closer to 2 or 3 weeks off. And then ramped back in if you've had a nasty bout of the flu. Coronavirus, is a little bit of a different kettle of fish, because people get it in really quite a broad range of severities. So for some people, it's a little bit like a cold, maybe with some flu-y symptoms. So for that, the kind of advice that I just gave around returning to run after the flu is a good place to start. As always, listening to your body. There is some evidence starting to come out of the sort of sports science community about return to sport post-COVID, and the advice is very much to take it more gently than you think, to take a long time over it, to listen to your body, maybe keep a training diary about how you feel, your energy levels, your fatigue, how the run went, your heart rate on those runs. That's a really great indicator of really how recovered you are, and how well your body is coping with this return to training. For less serious, but I guess symptoms that you notice of having had COVID, that's a good place to start. Now, obviously, people get more serious cases of COVID. So for those people who perhaps end up in hospital, COVID doesn't just have an impact on our respiratory system, so our lungs. It also has an impact on some other aspects of our body, like our kidneys, like our immune system. So for that, it is absolutely imperative, if you've been hospitalized with COVID, or if you've been diagnosed with long COVID or have those style of symptoms, absolutely imperative you get some specific medical advice for you before returning to training. So that might be a respiratory physiotherapist who can actually work with you to help your lungs and your cardiovascular system gradually rebuild. It's very careful and important to do that under a specifically designed program, rehabilitatory program, because that's recovery from a medical condition as opposed to more just return to run. I've had a handful of runners over the last 18 months that have had what I would call slightly more serious sort of dices with COVID, where they've not been hospitalised, but they have been really poorly at home, and it has dragged on for a few weeks and months, even quite young people, where they find that their run performance is really quite affected, and they're still getting, you know, sort of slight breathiness, high heart rate on their runs. So alongside some conversations that they're having with their GP to make sure that it is okay from a heart-lung perspective to return to training, we are starting things very, very gently, keeping a diary of how everything's feeling after each run, and gradually getting back into things that way. So it's, as always, a bit of an it depends answer on these things as to what you've had, how it's impacted you. But if in any doubt, particularly with the more serious end of the scale with COVID, so if it's, you know, impacted you for more than just a kind of flu-like incident, then it's definitely worth talking to either your GP or obviously if you've been hospitalised with the medical treatment team that you have. One final thing to finish off with that people don't think about quite a lot is tummy bugs. So tummy bugs really do wipe us out. Obviously, you've got a period of time where you're suffering from diarrhea and vomiting, where you can't keep food down. Your body is in a really, really depleted state quite quickly. You get quite dehydrated quite quickly. So a couple of little things to think about there. One, sports drinks are actually really, really good for helping us rehydrate and helping us get the electrolyte levels back in our bloodstream when we've been poorly. So the stuff that you get as rehydration salts over the counter in the chemist to help post tummy bug or during tummy bugs is actually pretty similar to the stuff that you get in sports drinks. So if you've got sports drinks around the house, that can really help whilst you're feeling grotty. But bear in mind, again, it will take a good week or so post tummy bug, so after all of your symptoms have gone, for your body to actually be fully rehydrated, have all the fuel in the right place, and have finished that kind of fighting off the bug process, because it's still doing a bit of fighting off the bug in the background, even when you feel well, as I say, just sat around you know, the home, not challenging yourself. So another one where it's worth taking a little bit of extra time, giving your body a little bit more TLC before you get back into training. I hope that's helpful.